Hey Angie,
Hey, John.
have you ever had that experience with a client where sometimes it just feels like they love showing up for a chat rather than really making any progress with you?
Yeah, definitely. Run, run, run. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I have too. I thought it would be good for us to discuss that and the client journey and experience
Yeah,
and really why it matters so much for us to not fall into that trap of comfortable, pleasant, nice conversations, but we're actually
sure.
making sure that our clients are getting results.
Super valid. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's open the clinic. Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie.
The show for professional coaches who want to develop their skills and grow their business.
Follow the show on your favorite podcast app.
And join us every Wednesday for new episodes.
So Angie, this was on my mind as to the whole client journey. And I can't remember what triggered this sort of thought for me. I must have seen something that someone posted about customer journeys. I think, well, what's that like for coaching clients? Because I
Mhm.
think clients can end up having very different experiences. But what really matters in coaching is that the clients are getting transformation. They are becoming bigger and different and they're progressing rather than they just get to show up and have a nice conversation with their coach each week.
That's so funny because the first thing that jumps into my head is back when I used to work for, right, as we know, right? John and I have worked for various coaching companies. And one of the companies I worked for, I don't know what it was. Let's just call it $500, right? Was the cost of a session. And the trainer, used to say, "You need to challenge these clients, right? We're not sitting and having a $500 cup of coffee." That statement has resonated forever and ever, and it funny enough has become a bit of a checkpoint for me, like after a session. I might even say to myself at times, was that a $500 cup, whatever that number is, right? I'm just using that number. But was that a $500 cup of coffee? Or was that an impactful conversation or a session? But yeah, so it's just funny that you brought that up today.
I think it's one of it is one of those things that we do sometimes have clients who we perhaps connect with a little
Yeah.
more than some others. That's life, we connect more
Mm-hmm.
deeply with some people than others, and we may even look forward more to some particular clients' calls than others. We've discussed that before, but we didn't so much discuss it from the perspective of there may be clients who, like, you might think in other circumstances would be really good pals for you, but that's not what the coaching relationship is really supposed to be about. I mean,
Sure.
can you be friends with your coaching clients? We have discussed that on another episode, but I think it's come up a few times. And I do think it's a bit of a yes, but maybe after you've worked together, if you get on really well, it's because otherwise that is going to screw up the dynamic of the coaching situation. And that's really what we talk about. So it's a comfortable trap to fall into, that you like
Very.
talking to the client and you get on with them and they're paying you money for this as well, but they like talking to you too. And they
Mm.
probably don't really want to mention so much that, well, was they getting some value from friendship and good conversations? They're not really getting what they probably came to you for, which is transformation and progress.
Yeah, it's so true and it's so easy, especially like you said earlier, we've talked about this a little bit, like long-term clients, and there's that familiarity, and is that working against you, or does that, work against you? It makes your job actually harder and not easier, complacency and all of the things. But if we go back to the beginning of the relationship, I think that we have to set that standard for ourselves. And also, here's the thing, I don't know if we should decide what an impactful session looks like. And I think that can change the conversation. So here's what I mean briefly. I've had a couple of clients over the years that did not want hard, direct pushing. Probing. They didn't want that. It didn't work for them. It had to be much more subtle. And if anybody's ever heard me talk or met me in person, you know that one of the things that words you would never use to describe me is subtle. So, but that taught me something.
Supple maybe, but not supple.
I am supple. It's true. But the truth of the matter is, like, meeting people where they're at and then elevating that at that moment, I think is important. But I can't be exactly the same with every single client. And I do think that some people respond better with a softer approach that isn't as scary, because the last thing we want somebody to do is run like their head is on fire. But we also know that when there's change on the horizon, like it's looming, it's sitting there, there's resistance. We know that. So some clients need the harder push, and some clients really just need a more subtle approach to the probing that might feel and or sound a little more friendly or a little more conversational. So that was just, something I wanted to highlight.
It's interesting for me because that's very relevant. I have two clients at the moment who sit at either each end of the spectrum you're talking about there. One is like, he wants to go deeper on stuff, but he needs to be gently coaxed into it. He can't just be confronted. We're going to have the conversation. He wants to be challenged, but not in a sort of in your face kind of way. And another client at the other end of that, who's like, give me feedback, give me everything raw and dirty. I just want everything you got, throw it at me, and then we'll do it. And even with that permission, I'm a bit like, he's saying, oh, you're telling me everything here. And I said, well, look, they have to draw a line somewhere between giving you feedback and just beating you up, because I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to discourage you. I want to challenge you. It's like, yes, I can give you more, but I'm also very aware of my goal is not to give you so much that you feel like packing it in, or I'm not here to test your limit. I'm really, I'm here willing to challenge you and make sure that you get challenged the way you want to. But this isn't a sex dungeon where you get the master and slave. Where you get the master and slave.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back.
So yeah, I have a friend who's a dominatrix. I would say a professional dominatrix. She's not a prostitute. She doesn't have sex with them. But these guys pay her. They pay her money to be mean to them, to punish them.
So I'm in the wrong. Yeah, so basically, I'm in the wrong industry. No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to poke fun, but I'm going to tell all of you listening, I had no idea what Jacques was going to say today. And I'm just a little surprised right now. That's all. I'm just enjoying this really open conversation. I'm sorry. Please continue.
So look, this is a friend who's also a professional speaker, and she talks about this. She's written books about that sort of mentality, that lessons that could be related from that experience that are very valuable and empowering. So it's not just being dirty here. I'm really just talking about the goal is not to beat them up or to whip them into shape. Even if they are asking for it, even if they're paying you the money, you're not trying to make them small, or you're not trying to diminish them. You still need to have that balance of encouragement and push as well. Even if they're asking you to, all right, give it to me harder and dirtier and let's not go further down that road. But
please,
you get what I'm saying.
I think I'm blushing. I think I'm blushing right now. I don't blush, but I feel the heat.
These are kind of extremes of like, one person's just like, all right, go for it, throw everything you got to be, and we'll tough it all out, Mr. Resilience, and all of this, great. But the other guy is like, all right, help me do it, and there's a scale in between. There's a whole spectrum in between of where people are at. So working with each client is going to be different, and yes, you want to meet their needs to some point, but you still need to stay you with that. You still need to have permission when you go forward with that, and you still want to make sure that you're not just challenging people for the sake of challenging them, or not pushing them hard enough because you want to keep them comfortable, and not have them saying, oh, actually this is making me a little uncomfortable. Sometimes we have to be willing to say the things that they may
Yes.
not want to hear, because they're there as our client, not there as to like us. With They're not our fan club.
Well, I mean, I think that there's an art form to that. I think that we as coaches need to be nimble enough to have it maybe not always be easier, right? Or not always be more difficult. I think even the person who's like, as you said, give it to me dirty. I don't even know what to say. But even with those people, kind of keeping some level of, I don't want to say autonomy, but some shift of energy in each of the sessions, because that helps it remain a little bit more novel and not become overly comfortable. At the end of it, though, we also have to be able to, how do I want to say this? Right. We have to be impact driven. And if they're like, so for me, if I feel like there's a little maybe too much conversation, and the person is easily distracted, right? They start to, I mean, we talk about one thing, they go to something else, there's avoidance and all of the things. Really have no problem, hey, this, I think we talked about this a year ago by now. At the end of every session, I always ask a question about the session, a rating of some kind, so that I have an idea of what is really resonating. And I will check in and say, so occasionally, if this could be more impactful for you, how could we shift, right? How could we shift these conversations? Do you feel like, because some people do, they want a cheerleader, they need the cheerleader. Some people want it to be, a certain way. Come at me, challenge me all you want. And it will resonate differently with different people. But even while we're being, like, say, let's just say friendly, we're not friends. And we always have to keep that in mind. We have to keep in mind that sometimes, how like we just have, sometimes we have easier clients and more difficult clients. When I think of a more difficult client, it's not that they're a difficult person per se, but they are very tough to get to the core. Like there's so much more probing, because they're very comfortable giving you right or surface level answers. So I have to probe. I have to keep going. I have to find the nuggets, right, of gold, or,
Right.
whatever it is.
But you don't
So,
do that in a way of slamming your fist down, like, tell me now. It's not
yeah.
how you do it.
Well, I recently had a newer client say to me, I don't understand. I feel like you're looking for bad, like, and said it to me that way. And I said, I'm not looking for bad. I'm looking for the challenges, right? Because we're having a very surface conversation. That's not the goal here, right? The goal isn't to just have an overarching, how was your week, or, your month, or whatever, and just have a conversation. We need to, if you want there to be some kind of an outcome, there has to be, I don't know if it's a stress, but we have to apply levels of pressure to keep it out of that comfort zone. And, maybe that's just part of what they don't understand what coaching actually is.
Yeah, they might be thinking that it's almost like a psych evaluation that they have to pass, or not
Sure.
fully, no, maybe
Yeah.
not always fully trusting that what's being said on the coaching calls is actually going to be confidential. I mean, so
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily know. Or some people are not familiar with actually having those safe, confidential
Yes.
environments where they can open up, and where somebody is holding that space for them. So, there's stuff to talk about and address there, but it's not getting up in someone's face saying, tell me everything right now. It
Sure.
is like working with them in the right way to uncover what is
Yeah.
actually going to help them grow. Because yeah, surface conversations are not going to get you very far. And
Mhm.
sometimes clients will recognize that they're not going deep enough, and they want to be challenged further. I've had that with clients I've worked with as well. It's like, we can go deeper here, and you have, I ask permission. Do I have your permission to challenge you a bit harder on that then? Because I think sometimes it's that thing of, you don't always want to say stuff to clients because they might react negatively. And this is where you would say, hey, look, there's something I don't want to say here, and it's probably going to be a little uncomfortable and challenging for you.
Yeah.
Am I okay to say it, or would you prefer, actually, I'm not sure I can handle that right now.
Sure.
or find a way to ease into this because you
No,
have to check in and meet them where they're at.
I did that last week. I mean, I have some clients that will ask me, I know this is not, it's not directly on topic, but they'll say, "Hey, so what do you think?" And we all know I don't really like to share a perspective, because I know that if they're asking, they're looking for like some kind of validation, not so much direction, but I navigate it. And last week, I was very direct with two different clients. One of them did ask, and I told them something that I said, "Listen, I know this is going to sound uncomfortable, but I have a trained ear, and sometimes your rate of speech is increasing, and it's hard to understand you. And I get that, and I want to soften and say, I get it because, hey, I'm from the Northeast. I speak quickly. My Northeastern accent comes out when I speak more quickly. And then I'm just not as impactful. Right. So I was trying to soften it. And the other client, it was, their perspective was, I think that sometimes I can be perceived as difficult or overly direct. And I said, well, if I might, can I share an experience? And she said, yeah. And I told her, I said, you and I had a conversation and you said, you're looking for the negative, you're looking for the bad. And I said, when you said that to me, if I was not confident in what I do, I might have been taken aback, like it was a little bit like reprimandish, you know? And I was honest. And of course, after the session, I'm saying to myself, is it really okay to be that direct? And I said, you know what? Yes, it is. I can't be uncomfortable because of their discomfort. Right. So I asked for permission. I got it. I didn't have to, I didn't have them sign off and say, "You sure this is okay?" Because I don't want to trigger you. But sometimes I do think it's worth shocking but not making it up and making it more brash in some way. But that will change an entire conversation or relationship when you are effectively when you're being more direct with people and less like
I would say so.
conversational.
Yeah. And a specific example of that client who I said was like the other end of the spectrum, being very don't treat me gently kind of thing, who has
Yeah.
given permission to push a bit
Yeah.
harder and go deeper on things. We've been doing that in a really constructive way.
I was going to
And
say, but
I
isn't
would
it
say
the
that,
how, John? Right? For us, it's like
yeah,
you
yeah,
can be very direct with like what you said. It's how you artistically as a coach do that probing that's going to make the difference.
yeah. And so one of the things I particularly had recognized was that there was an opportunity for a deeper level of presence. And so we were
Mm.
doing some work on that. And I did push it a bit harder. And I will say on the last call that we were on, I've never seen him looking so happy and present. And it was just
Mm.
like, I brought it up on the call and like, yeah, that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't made that push to go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. From a coach's perspective, your clients are your best advertisement for what you do.
Sure.
They are
Yeah.
your best referral source a lot of the time. And if they're just having a nice time chatting with you, that doesn't really, it sounds like, oh, I'm looking for a coach. You have a coach, don't you? Tell me about that. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have really great conversations. I look forward to the calls. My coach is lovely. Really like working with
Mhm.
them. Is that all right? And what's changed for you since you started doing the coaching? Oh, well, we had some goals, but we more or less
Yeah.
just sort of just get together and chat each week now. You think, is that person who's talking to them going to think, oh, right, I need to work with that coach? No, no, they're not. It's gonna be, "Oh, well, good for you, but, I would want something a bit more from my coach." But you get the other side of that of someone says, "Oh, hey, I've been working with my coach for ages. My life was transformed. My business results are more than I even expected. I've seen big changes in my professional and personal life, and it's all come from working with this coach, and she's great to talk to and all that, but I also get really challenged in my sessions, and it's been worth every penny and more for doing that." You think that's a bit of a better advert for your coaching, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about it like I can't even look at it in terms of like how would I want coaching? Because how I receive coaching, it needs to like it's you and I've talked about this. It really needs to be direct. It doesn't have to hurt per se, but because I'm so highly self-aware, and I think that if we keep that in mind, that not everybody is, number one, and the impact, right? The goal is to have impact. And every single session isn't going to be skyrockets. There are going to be sessions that might feel a little benign, a little vanilla, and we might say to ourselves as coaches, we might question, like, did I challenge enough? And we should be asking ourselves that anyway, right? Even on the greatest of sessions where somebody is like, oh my gosh, Angie, I never realized that. That's a great win, and we want to use that as kind of the springboard into what comes next. But even when that's happened, especially when it's not, we need to do that bit of analysis. Did I get lazy today? Did I just allow the call to be conversational because I don't know, I didn't have the mental, emotional, or physical bandwidth to show up? I have definitely experienced that. So, I have some rules that I've set for myself, some boundaries, like the work night before, I don't go out anywhere, I don't do anything. I go to bed early so I can wake up early. There's practices that I keep in place for me because I know, John knows I had a headache today. So I'm like, oh, John, how are you, Angie? Oh my God, I have a splitting headache, which is now gone. I had some caffeine. I feel a little bit better. But point is, sometimes we have to really check ourselves before going in. Am I ready to be the best coach I can be for this person today? Do I have the bandwidth in all of my energy spaces to provide that? Or am I going to be lazy? And the answer is no, can't be lazy. Doesn't matter if you have a headache, right? You still have to get up and do it and not allow things to be, it's just a waste, not be a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, look, I've seen, you may or may not have heard of this, but there's these like gig economy kind of works jobs now where people are putting themselves on the market to be a hug buddy, and they'll just go around and hug or cuddle someone for a while. Nothing rude about it, anything like that. Is very
Right. It's not
um
sexually
it's
based
not at all
and
sexual. It is people want to feel touch and feel loved and
hmm
cared about and hugged, and that's great, but that's not what coaching is. And so
yeah.
coaching isn't, it sounds like you want to give them that sort of emotional virtual hug
Sure.
kind of thing, but it's not really what coaching is about. It's not what it's for. But it's more about challenging them. It's more about helping them to grow, to develop. Sometimes a bit of that caring is needed in a coaching session,
Oh
but not
gosh,
all the
yeah.
time. It's not
Yeah.
just there to give them that warm, huggy feeling the whole time, and that shouldn't be what they're paying for either. And I think this is a trap that coaches do sometimes fall into, of this the velvet trap really of it's nice. So I'm helping the client because they have this nice environment where they can talk. It's that's not coaching, it's more counseling. It's creating that sort of space just for them. You want them to have
hmm
that and more. If you're not
Yeah.
really helping them to expand and to transform in positive ways, you're not really coaching them. So I think that you have to look at it
I
from that
think that's
perspective. It's like,
situational,
this is your
right?
results.
I
Maybe.
think it's situational. I think it depends. Like I've worked with some clients, and again, I don't think time has anything to do with it, but when you work with people over long periods of time, you happen to go through life cycles and seasons with them. It could be a birth, it could be a death, it could be a divorce, it could be a marriage. And I think sometimes in the harder times when they are emotional, again, we're not counselors, we're not therapists, and some of you may be those things, and if you incorporate that into your sessions, have at it. But if you're not licensed in any of those ways, you can still be empathetic. You can still say, hey, I'm sorry that your cat died. I'm just not being extreme, like that it's a family member.
Sure.
I'm
But those are
sorry.
instances. There are
Correct,
instances within the
specific
coaching
situations.
journey. They are
Yeah.
not the coaching journey itself.
Correct.
And so that's really more sort of the overall big picture
Yeah.
here of, yeah, there's going to be elements of this, that, and the other that come
Yeah.
into your coaching, but
Yeah.
ultimately the coaching is
Yes.
a journey of progress and expansion and transformation. And if those things
Right. It
aren't
shouldn't be the
happening,
overarching theme. I think I need
yeah,
a hug buddy. I
yeah.
want a hug buddy.
It sounds good, right? It
I'm
sounds
like, I
quite
need
nice,
a
actually.
hug. I want a hug right
Yeah, I'm
now. Oh,
just
no,
gonna
anyway.
lay down on my bed for a bit. Someone just come and cuddle up to me for a while,
Ooh,
but not for too
sweet
long because it
jeez.
needs to be someone who stays cool because I get super hot. Anyway, not in that way. Not in that way.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I'm you know me, I'm the human furnace, so I get it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm like that. I
well, I
run
think
hot.
at the end of the
But yeah,
day, levels of challenge and really again, you've heard me say this over and over, like the pace car. We have to know or maybe look for opportunities where we're not splashing ice cold water on people. That is not enjoyable for anybody, although I guess there might be some people that are like, I love my annual polar plunge, go for it. But in general, nobody likes the shock of that. Like in the morning it's 5 a.m. and you're stepping into an ice cold shower. Nobody wants that. So I don't think we want to create a resistant environment either. So we as coaches have to navigate and read the energy of the conversation, of the session,
yeah,
and not just check in before and after, be nimble during the session and be able to say, is this becoming a little bit too conversational, and how do I get it out of that if I'm actively aware of it? I think,
right.
there's ways we can do that. We can talk more about that later or at a different session. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think, yeah, I
you're not
think
doing
it's
therapy. You're not their
correct.
drill sergeant. You're not their mama. You're the coach, and so show show up as the coach. Be the coach for them, but do consider that the customer client experience that your clients have is the bedrock of your business, and you want
Yeah,
that to be something that you'd be happy for. You sort of think, "Oh, if my clients ever talk to somebody about their experience of working with me, the likelihood is those people, if they're thinking about coaching, think, oh wow, I need to work with your coach." That should be what we're aiming for as coaches, I
sure.
think.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Well,
All right.
got
Well, I
it.
think it's been a good chat, Angie. It's been lovely to get together with you again, and we'll be
Yes.
back more soon with some more coaching clinic.
Do you have a question for the coaching clinic?
Reach out on LinkedIn to connect with Angie and John.
Leave us a voicemail or video message and we will feature you on the show.
You can also leave up to 90-second voicemail for free on www.speakpipe.com/the Coaching Clinic podcast.
We'd love to hear from you.
See you next time.
Bye for now.